From the moment our mind begins to take shape, even before the time we're born, it learns to make associations. In this sense, the mind can be thought of as an association-making machine, and its purpose is generating adaptive outputs, actions, experiences that help us survive and understand the world we live in. In other words, our experiences reflect the way we are currently trying to adapt to reality. And everything that exists does so through a function. Existence is functioning, meaning that any object, in the conventional sense of the word, is just a conglomerate of functions, like an apple being something of varying colors, tastes, sizes, shapes, etc. And the mind has to make use of these functions in order to make sense of the world. So I developed a model based on this to show how the mind creates and organizes our functional experiences, where any object is an experience with varying degrees of complexity. I'll make a disclaimer here since I'm currently still developing this model, so it is possible that some ideas will later have to be corrected. Now, in this video, we will briefly describe the functioning of the first three types of objects, starting with the most basic one, which I call a micro-object. Reiterating, every object is an experience, a function, related to something that the mind does as a consequence of the object. And micro-objects are sensory-type experiences. Their only function is discrimination, or in other words, they trigger basic orientation, allowing for responsive, relevant behaviors to serve our survival and well-being. They are probabilistic, spontaneous, and short-lived. They don't involve things like shape or size, but vague sensorial properties that will later be approximated to shape and size and all kinds of other functions. They don't tell the whole story. In fact, no single type of object can really do that, but they do lead the way for the next type of object, which I call a basic object. They refer to individual ways in which any stable or identifiable characteristic of a conventional object, say a mug or a light bulb, can manifest as functions. They develop through the repeated association of sensory clusters and at first can only take on functions regarding sensory-derived properties, like the aforementioned shape, size, or distance. Later, they can entail more specific functions such as throwable, holdable, or breakable. In summary, basic objects are related to basic individual functions. But the world is composed of objects that can take on many functions. An apple is holdable, edible, throwable, breakable, and more, sometimes all at once. So all these individual basic functions can and do cluster into a complex object, which we can later call an apple. These clusters are more or less stable, meaning that only a few arrangements or hierarchies of functions can be stable, meaning an apple will have a few stable functions as opposed to random arrangements of functions. And this is important since the most stable cluster of functions becomes what we'll call a primary functional core. But we'll talk about that in a later video. Back to complex objects, they can be thought of as the heart of the mind architecture. They're the point at which all trajectories of experience end up. They are also the point from which conscious self-organization develops. And I know that consciousness can be thought of as either linear or categorical, meaning different life forms can have varying levels of consciousness, or we can talk about threshold or a more specific phenomenon of consciousness. In the context of complex objects, we more so refer to the second way of understanding consciousness. But again, this calls for a secondary dedicated video. For now, we will summarize what we talked about in this video and I'll see you with the next part. I'd appreciate your support by leaving the video with a like, comment, and subscribe.
Wake up every day, I have some food and everything seems like it's going to be fine. Then all of a sudden shit